and to schools and other sort of education partners. Amit from Network Rail, and I've just lost you all on the screen there because it's got a little chat popping up in the middle, and Dante from GTR as well, who's able to bring both a mix of kind of the education piece, but also those kind of aspects about how we support people when they move into the workplace as well. So sort of key topics from a sort of beyond barriers perspective. How do we engage young people, raise awareness of railway careers, and at the same time make sure that process is inclusive as they're coming in through the recruitment process, but also then making sure that that inclusive aspect continues and they feel welcomed and they can thrive in their sort of day jobs going forward. So yeah, I'll just hand over to the panelists to introduce themselves. So it'd be brilliant to hear from each of you. Just introduce your name, your sort of organisation you're from, and just give us a quick overview of some of the work you're doing across the rail sector. Jenny, can you go first?
Thank you, Tom. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jenni Anderson, and I'm the Chief Exec of the Talent Foundry. We are a social mobility charity working across the UK. We help young people in schools, predominantly schools which are serving populations in underserved communities, to help those students build their skills and confidence so they can have more choices about their future. And I'm really proud that we've been working with Network Rail and RSSB for over 6 years now on what are award-winning programs, so supporting young people into railway careers, but also helping them to think about what that career looks like and how they might build their skills, or how they might already have the talent that the railway industry is looking for. So really pleased to be here and talk more about that later. Brilliant,
thank you, Jenny. Amit, coming to you next.
Thanks, Tom. Good morning, everyone. My name is Amit Kotecha. I work as Senior Early Careers Manager at Network Rail. My role is to help young people sort of discover and access careers across the rail industry. So the team I work in, we work with schools, colleges, partner organisations to raise awareness of the sort of wide career opportunities open to young people, with the aim of improving sort of social mobility and ensuring that all young people, regardless of their background, can see rail as a career for everyone. And ultimately, we want to build a more diverse workforce in the industry and to help us build our future talent pipelines.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Amit. And Dante, over to you.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. My name is Dante Frederick. I'm a diversity and inclusion partner at GTR, which is Great Northern, Thameslink, Gatwick Express, and Southern Railways. So we're the largest TOC in the UK. And I would say I have to say I was sort of a seconded at the time to DFTO, but I was kind of a partner in the process of developing Beyond Barriers, which I'm really, really thrilled to be here and see what you guys are up to today. And I would say probably our biggest impact is that we are being such a large employer. We do a lot of work, certainly in terms of expanding our employability programs in general, because we know that we're facing this big, skills shortage that's coming down the pike very quickly, particularly in engineering, but in other areas as well. And so we do a lot of work around employability and pre-employability programs with young people, but also with other groups that are disadvantaged. And our current HR director, people director, Ruth Busby, was one of the founders of the Rail Youth Promise, which is a new initiative to kind of really bring young people into the business. So we're very much engaged with that. And I'm really keen to hear what other people are doing as well.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. So really clear, I think, from that sort of opening sort of just discussion, introducing yourselves, the sort of depth of your work across the rail sector and the importance of the activities that we're talking about today, both in terms of the current sort of setup of the railways, but also thinking ahead. And Dante, you mentioned things like the skills shortage and the Rail Youth Promise. So again, just maybe a quick question that I can just bounce around the three of you before we get into a kind of maybe a bit more detail with each of you in turn. But just thinking around the sort of things you just touched on there, why is this agenda so important for rail almost right now? Amit, could you go first on that one?
Yeah, so I think for me, rail really needs a strong and sustainable sort of talent pipeline to meet future workforce demands. So the Rail Youth Promise is a really important step because it brings the industry together around a shared commitment, and that ultimately is to create more opportunities for young people. I think we also are looking at a place-based approach. It's really understanding the different challenges in locations so that we come up with solutions that reflect local needs and local opportunities. But ultimately, it's about creating opportunities for young people and supporting social mobility through our different programs that we all deliver.
Amazing. Jenny, could you expand a little bit on that sort of location place-based piece that Amit's just touched on there, because obviously you work within rail but also beyond rail, so you've got a lot of experience in different places, different locations, responding to that sort of local agenda. Could you just sort of build on that a bit for the group, please?
Yeah, every area has its own needs, and that's the same for students and schools. So the programs that we've been running with Network Rail and RSSB have always been developed in partnership with what's happening locally. So what is the local labour market like? What are the skills and talents that are lacking or in abundance, and how do we capitalise on that? So it's about thinking about having a positive mindset about local communities rather than thinking that they have nothing to offer, because students that we talk to have lots to offer. They just don't know perhaps sometimes where to put their enthusiasm or their aspirations. So I think for us at the Talent Foundry, it's always about thinking, well, how do we bring local employers, schools, students together to think about how they can have a positive impact in their local communities, which is right for them. And those students then perhaps don't have to think about leaving their hometown or moving away from their family, because actually those opportunities, particularly in rail, are actually on their doorstep already.
That's interesting. That sort of real local aspect, local opportunity, like you said there, that sort of bit of, I think it's come up in sort of previous calls as well, that aspect around how do you create that opportunity locally, so you don't, like you said, you don't need to move, you don't need to travel, you don't need to sort of relocate and so on. I suppose coming to you, sort of Dante, on this topic, and maybe coming up a couple of levels to that sort of industry view. You mentioned the Rail Youth Promise. There's a lot of opportunity here, isn't there?
Well, that's exactly right. And I think the reason this is such an important conversation to have right in this moment is, of course, the advent of GBR. The GBR is coming, and it is a huge opportunity, but it's also going to be a challenge in the sense that it is a very big picture. And how do we, engage both those kind of like place-based, localized needs, as well as looking at linking all of these different disparate pieces together? Because I do know, there's lots of good work happening in all sorts of little corners. And the opportunity with GBR is that we can start to connect those dots. I mean, just the fact that we're looking at now bringing in, train drivers at 18, which means they'll probably come into training at 17. Just that in itself is an opportunity to say, right, we can look at this and see what's working and where the problem spots are here, and see how we can translate that to all these other kinds of roles throughout the industry. But I think in general, GBR is a massive opportunity. But also a challenge in terms of how do we go about making sure that nobody's slipping through the cracks.
No, that's a great point. Yeah, so making sure you can spot opportunity and scale it, but at the same time making sure that we don't leave people behind. Again, is a sort of key message we've had across that whole social mobility piece over the past sort of 12 months or so. I suppose sort of delving into the sort of nuts and bolts, I suppose, in some ways. Amit, could you sort of share a few sort of thoughts from your side around, what are the most sort of effective features of some of the sort of programs you deliver out across the rail network?
Yeah, so I'll probably say the most effective features is having age-specific outreach that really focuses on making careers feel real and achievable. That's really important. So I think for younger children, I'm thinking more primary school children, it's about raising awareness and sparking that curiosity. And then as we start delivering to sort of secondary age school children, it's much more about connecting rail careers to them. So particularly focusing around hidden roles in rail. We know lots of young people don't know about the breadth and depth of careers in rail. But also connecting it to the subjects they're studying, which is really important. And I think that post-16 piece is much more focusing on employability and work readiness skills and sort of career pathways, where we're talking more about apprenticeship schemes and grad schemes and entry-level roles. But I think we also place quite a big emphasis on relatable role models. That's really important, particularly around working with apprentices and grads. Young people need to see and speak to people they relate to. That's really important. But I think we want to show young people what a career in rail really looks like through hands-on experiences. So we really focus on workplace visits and direct engagements with young people that are much more relatable and engaging to sort of bring it to life more.
That's awesome, thank you. And Jenny, I suppose coming to you next, because obviously Amit talked about the sort of different ages that are engaged in some of those sort of aspects. Thinking about programs like Track to the Future, and as you highlight there, that sort of role of mentors and seeing people that are from your background, from your kind of community that have progressed into different roles. How does that play across in sort of programs like Track to the Future or indeed Light Bulb Moments?
I mean, I think the Track to the Future program that we run is an intensive program for students, as Amit said, at the older age range of secondary school into sixth form, and it's about providing them with the real life problems that you might be facing in your day-to-day jobs across a variety of career and job roles. And I think that is one of the things that is most surprising to young people that we work with across these programs, is that there is so much opportunity. You really can do anything in rail. So even though we might be looking at primary school students about sparking that curiosity, that doesn't get lost the older you get. You still have to have that spark of curiosity to think about what you might want to do next. And Track to the Future and our light bulb moment programs do that in abundance, and that's done through those meaningful project activities. So thinking through the problems that people at Network Rail might have, working in teams, problem solving, thinking critically, speaking up, presenting your pitch, all of those skills that you need in the workplace. Students are able to practice those in a safe way, without judgment, given really good feedback and enthusiasm from the volunteers that attend those sessions and act as mentors on those programs. And then they can think, well, actually, if I can see you're doing that, you've given me some great feedback, and you're doing this job I'd never heard of before. So maybe I should put that in my, in my thought process for what I might want to do next. Because none of us, well, I say none, ask for some hands up, but who really knew what they wanted to do when they were 14? Not many people. Is the job that you're doing now the job that you thought you were going to be doing when you were at secondary school? Probably not. So we can't expect young people today to have that same view of the world. So we have to give them choice. And I think the railway industry really does offer a huge choice and huge variety of options for young people. So a lot of our programs about making sure that all of that awareness is there, but it is also backed up with practical activities where they can develop their skills and talents with the support of role models.
Yeah, it's so true, isn't it? And we've had conversations in forums like this before. Like you said, it's that sort of, how do you understand what those careers potentially are, and at the same time, as you've highlighted there, the activities where you're used to solving problems, you're used to working in teams, you're kind of getting prepared for those sorts of roles that you might find yourself in when you come into the railways. And so I suppose in some ways, sort of Dante, coming to you, that sort of aspect of when people have been encouraged towards a role or something, what's most effective in kind of attracting someone towards the railway, and then making sure that as they come in, they're kind of prepared for the roles they might end up doing?
Yeah, well, I think that's really key, because I know that a lot of times we've looked at certain, aspects of attraction, and then we have to sort of make a pause and think, well, hang on, are we actually as an industry and as a business ready to support these young people? And I think that, again, sort of to reflect back on this idea of bringing in younger train drivers, we're having a real conversation internally about what's that going to look like, and how do we make sure that those young people coming in are coming into a mess room that is welcoming to them, which is not always the case, as we know, in mess rooms. So it's really important that we have that thought, that conversation in advance of bringing them in. But I think in terms of, how we make it more attractive as well is, again, has been sort of noted before, is to show them people who are doing the job now, who are thriving, and we're able to kind of talk directly about, this is what I do, this is why it's really interesting, this is why it's exciting to me. Because I know for me, before I've been at GTR for 10 years. Before, I'd never worked in the rail before. I had no clue what the possibility was, what the range of possibilities were in terms of careers in the industry. It just had never occurred to me, and it was a real eye opener. And I think that and for me, when I'm out in the world, that's the thing I talk about the most. Is, listen, it's not just train drivers or people standing on the platform. Those are great roles, but there are a lot of other things you could be doing, and almost anything you're interested in, there is a route to that in the railway, which is a new information for many people. So I think that's another thing we have to continually, ring that bell.
Brilliant, amazing, thank you. Jess, have you got your hand up? Do you want to ask a question?
Yeah, I do. First time I've attended one of these sessions, but I just wanted to ask a question about how are we advertising these to ensure that we get the breadth of people that we're looking for. We're obviously talking about young people aged 16 to 24. We know that's the highest area currently for unemployment. What are we doing around our SEND community? How are we advertising to them? How are we speaking to them? Because they don't always look at the same normal channels that a lot of us do. How are we getting to those that may not be on the platforms that we're looking at? I go out and do a lot of talks at SEND schools. My background, or my niche area is neurodiversity. So when I go out to SEND schools, I'm talking to them about the rail industry and really working out what is it you like doing, what is it you enjoy doing. Did you know that that role could be something like a train planner, or you could be looking at weather, you could be a hawk handler, you could be looking at our newts. So I get them really excited about that sort of stuff. But then my big worry is, are we set up to support people in the right way when they do land here? I know we're meant to be a disability confident leader, but actually how much do we align to that? And how are we going to recruit these people, ensure they stay with us, that they're supported with us through the right network, not just got through the door? So it'd be really great to hear about that.
Definitely. Thank you. Dante, do you want to take that one first?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that, I mean, for us, certainly the two questions there, which are really key, I think, is we in the last 10 years have made a massive shift towards how we go about recruiting people. So when I joined the business, it was very much, we have a website, it says what jobs are available, people come, and then we hire those people. And so, of course, we were getting the same people over and over because that's how it works. So we've had a big push to expand to a lot of different channels in terms of how people get to us. And that's been really successful in some areas. So for example, we have pretty much almost all of our train driver cohorts now are 50-50 male, female. Back in the day, you'd be lucky if you had one woman in a cohort. So now, and that's been purely about where we advertise, how we advertise, the language we use, etc. But we can do that in a lot of, and we've been doing that, trying to do that in a lot of other areas. But I think your point is really important, which is, and I think we need to get this right now, which is, right, we're really keen to recruit more disabled people with disabilities, but we're not really very well set up for that. We need to make sure we are set up for that before we bring those folks into the business. And that is, those things have to happen in tandem. You have to make sure you have that groundwork. So I think your point is, my feeling in the industry is we're getting there, but we have a lot of work to do in terms of making sure that the ground is ready. But we have to keep moving forward in that space in terms of who we're reaching out to.
Brilliant, thank you, Dante. I suppose, Amit, just to sort of tailor that sort of question a little bit to the more sort of schools-based aspects. Obviously, sometimes it works incredibly well. You engage with the school, and the school comes forward. You get a cohort going well. What happens when there's sort of blocks or barriers to kind of working with a school or working in an area? You know that there's a sort of priority group you want to reach, but actually, if the school's not engaging or if the school isn't sort of willing to take part, how do you kind of overcome some of those different barriers and linking into sort of the SEN agenda and so on?
Yeah, so the modular network rail that we use in our team is we work with delivery partners for that very reason, that we can't always engage with the schools and the target groups we want to target. So with Jenni being on this panel, we work very closely with Talent Foundry for that very same reason, because Talent Foundry have the relationship with schools across the country, and we can target specific schools based on our social mobility criteria. So for example, schools that Talent Foundry work with are schools, that have students from a higher sort of national average on pupil premium numbers, their schools in lower social areas, etc., etc. So we get really good traction and engagement with young people by working with delivery partners like the Talent Foundry. We also do struggle to work with schools when we engage with SEND students. So again, we take the same approach and work with charities. So we work with Duck2, which is a charity that focuses on working with young people with special educational needs. And again, they have those relationships with schools across the country, and we can go to them with our program and deliver something really meaningful. I think that really does help us to come over that barrier. But it might be worth me talking a little bit about Access to Rail, Tom, if that's okay. So
yeah, go for it.
Access to Rail is a governance framework that I am working on creating with the wider rail industry. This will be a practical framework for anyone in the rail industry who wants to work with an underrepresented group. So for example, NEETs, or it could be SEND students or people from the travellers community, ex-offenders, any group. And the idea is this framework will have information about partnerships, charities, programs, what you need to consider for safeguarding or governance, what conversations you need to be having with these groups, what outreach you need to deliver to these groups, and then progression pathways. So what next? Once you've inspired them and engaged them, what do you do next with this group? So we've delivered 5 workshops across the country with the industry, and we're now putting together a draft framework which we'll share with the industry. And again, if you want to get involved with this, please do reach out to me. But the whole idea of this is when people sort of land in this space, how do we support them? And I'm hoping this framework will give that guidance and support.
No, that's really interesting. I think we've just lost Jenny for a minute, so hopefully she'll jump back in. But I was going to delve into sort of the conversation about that sort of partnership point that you sort of mentioned there. So when she joins back again, we'll sort of explain. Here she is, thrown at the deep end. She hasn't got a clue what we've just been talking about. Back. Hi, Jenny. Sorry, we lost you for a second there.
Yeah, apologies. I had a power cut. Very strange.
No way. I was just going to ask you, sort of when Amit was talking just a second ago, he was sort of talking about the sort of role of partnerships and obviously the framework you mentioned around access to rail. So it'd be really good for sort of, I think if you, Jenny, could talk about on the sort of behalf of other sort of organizations such as yourself, that sort of value that comes from you being able to partner with, you know, pan-industry organizations such as Network Rail, but also the, you know, the train operators, the other organizations across rail that have that sort of very local focus and so on. So yeah, just delve into that sort of partnership piece and what really makes that work, and practically, but also in terms of collaboration and so on.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. Sorry, apologies for missing the last minute or so. Yeah, partnership is what makes it work, really. We are very proud of the way that over the years we've collaborated with the rail industry, because we all bring different strengths, and that's what makes our program so brilliant, because we, as Amit said, we have relationships across the UK with about 600 schools every year, and they're all in communities which would be considered underserved. So looking at areas where students are eligible for pupil premium or free school meals, for example, or in high areas of deprivation. But also it's about bringing those different skills and talents from the people that we work with. So we're working with schools. We know teachers are really stretched. We know capacity for teachers, particularly around careers advice and guidance, is really challenging. They don't necessarily have the professional networks in their local communities that they can call upon, and they have lots of other time pressures within the curriculum, with other enrichment activities, and also behaviour and attendance. So all of those things factor into whether or not an employer can just pick up the phone and speak to a school about coming in and perhaps doing an insights day or an assembly talk and things like that. So all of our activities is very much practically based around managing the logistics so that those students have a really meaningful experience with employers. And it's a full program of activities during those days, and it doesn't feel like a lesson. It doesn't feel like sitting in maths or science or English or humanities and things like that. It's very different to what school might feel like every day. And then that also helps with perhaps working with some of those students who perhaps don't like school that much at the moment. So this is another opportunity to engage and motivate them, that if school doesn't feel right for them for a variety of reasons, perhaps because of SEND needs or disabilities, then actually the workplace is looking for people like you. So that's some of the things that the role models bring the magic into the room, to say, actually, I know this might not be working out for you right now, but actually in the workplace we're looking for those skills. We're looking for those people that can work with other people, be talkative, be analytical, think through a problem, be reflective. Perhaps those skills that aren't that obvious when you're working through an English lesson or a science lesson, for example. But the other component is working with employers like we do with the train operating companies, and bringing those values into those sessions as well. So there is a really true partnership. Is what are employers looking for? What are they seeing is lacking from young people that they're perhaps seeing in interviews or employing right now, and how can we bridge that gap? And that's what the Talent Foundry does. But again, lots of other organisations do that across the country, because there's just not enough of us to fix this problem, particularly fixing the NEET problem. We've all got to get on board with that to make sure that fewer young people are falling off and becoming NEET at the end of their school days.
No, that's really interesting. And obviously we deliver programs with you and members across the rail industry as well. And that's the sort of feedback we get. It's that sort of the problems they've had in connecting to certain schools or specific areas and so on. You've helped them kind of overcome those aspects, like you said, pulling those insights from those organizations and presenting those to the young people you're kind of working with and so on, and providing that sort of legacy aspect, that sort of, you know, the feedback you get from participants, from the teachers and so on, and from the volunteers that take part in the program is really effective. And I think sort of taking that sort of topic and applying it both to Amit and Dante from a Network Rail and a train operator sort of perspective, just sort of thinking, Amit, potentially about the sort of, you know, where do you see sort of particular approaches that have been particularly successful in terms of I suppose, engaging young people and then increasing awareness of some of the roles that are available across the rail sector?
Yeah, so I don't want to repeat sort of what a lot was being said. So I think the delivery model that we have, so working with the likes of Talent Foundry, is brilliant in terms of that impact and reach. We're reaching those young people that we wouldn't ordinarily reach, and the impact is brilliant because working with people like Talent Foundry, they have, they're the experts in creating really good content. So we'll provide that expertise in the content, and they put it together in a really engaging lesson plan, and it's delivered by a facilitator, and we bring it to life through our role models. But some other sort of examples is collaborating with the wider industry. So we've had some massive successes working with the wider industry, where we've delivered insight weeks with the industry. We've delivered 1 week programs. So each day is delivered by a rail organisation on a particular area like engineering, project management, sustainability. So young people get to learn about a particular business area with industry. They get to learn about a organisation and meet role models from different organisations. And we've successfully delivered so many of these programs. We are delivering insight days again with the industry. We're looking at delivering joint track and train T-level placements. So again, for young people, it's all about learning about careers in the industry. And I think as we transition to GBI, it's really important on that collaborative piece. So that approach is working well, and we want to continue doing a lot more in that space.
That's really interesting. And sort of Dante, just sort of flipping that onto the next aspect, a lot of talk, a lot of conversation has been around that sort of pre-attraction aspect. But when people do come into the industry and begin a railway career, how do we make sure that they feel like they belong or they can thrive and kind of build a career from there?
Right. Well, I think that's something we're having a lot of conversations around right now, particularly building on the back of kind of the youth guarantee and the Rail Youth Promise, and in terms of our shifting our focus even more clearly onto young people, but also young people of all different groups. So I think that one of the things we've done sort of well in the way that we are able to really sell the business in a way that's more palatable to us, particularly to young people, is, for example, we have these 5 employee network groups, and they are really active and they are really engaged. And when we go out to job fairs or career fairs or whatnot, more and more those network group leads are coming to those events. So so we have people from our race ethnicity network talking to young people who are coming from various different sort of demographics. We also have a couple of the folks from our armed forces network who are trying to engage people who are just coming out of the armed forces and are really struggling to find a place to land. And I think that's proving to be really, really a quick and easy payoff, because again, it's showing people something like, oh, that's someone who's like me. They're doing this thing that's sort of interesting to me. That sort of shows me a clear pathway. But I think the other piece of that is, and the part that we're kind of in transition right now, which is really key, is that we are trying to kind of retrofit, in a sense. We're sort of going back and saying, right, how do we ensure, as we're developing our attraction, onboarding, progression programs, how do we make sure that we have a very clear component of that is specifically for young people just coming into employment? So because the needs that I had coming into GTR 10 years ago are very different, unfortunately, to what a 20-year-old might have coming into the business, and what their concerns might be, and what their priorities are. So there's a way that we can start to, I think, look at everything from I guess the important piece is it's in the design phase. We're designing it from the beginning with that in mind, rather than trying to sort of fit it in, as it comes along. So I think those are 2 really key points. It's important that we start to think about what kind of impact do we want to have, and what do we need to do to keep these young people. And the last thing I'll say really quickly is just that it's really important, I think, that whoever it is, whatever group demographic you are trying to bring into your business, you need to talk to those people. You need to talk to those people and find out what is important to them, what do they notice, what do they care about, and really do your due diligence and research into what's going to be attractive to a young person, or to a person who's coming in with a disability, or LGBT person, or whatever it might be. What do we need to do? Because they are the experts in terms of what their life looks like, and in terms of what jobs they're going to stay in.
No, that's fascinating. Just as you were talking that, I was thinking how the wider sort of railway makes its decisions on different things, like how we design new stations, new services.
Absolutely.
So we put the passenger at the heart of that kind of decision, or we try to. Like when we were touching there before about sort of place-based aspects, so understanding the local community and responding to those sorts of needs and opportunities. But as you've highlighted there, staff have just exactly the same sort of aspects. How do we think about their needs, their wants, their wishes kind of thing before they come into the sector, to make that progression piece really sort of work in that sense?
Can I just say, Tom, I think that just because you touched on a point that's really passionate about for me, which is that if you want to have a really positive customer experience, you must have a really positive employee experience. Those things are linked. They cannot be unlinked. You have to make sure, yes, the customer is so important to us, but you're not going to deliver for the customers if you're not delivering for your colleagues.
Yeah, fantastic point. Florence, did you have a question you wanted to come in with there?
Yes, I was going back to Jenny. So Jenny was talking about social deprivation, and the statistics are saying that a third of children would not pass those GCSEs at the required standard that we're asking for, apprenticeships. So I was just wanting to know, how are we reaching those children who maybe do not have those formal qualifications? And also then I was just going to say to Dante, my husband is ex-forces and actually came in through Network Rail and did his degree, and has been in the organisation for 11 years. So you can see that, yeah, that people do kind of stay within the organisation and are supported, for their continued development.
Great.
Yeah, so I kind of just wanted that question about that third of the population that we're just not targeting. There's nothing to do about capability. It's just to do with their situation at that time. And I had talked about this before, and we had met up with another couple of ladies to try and bring it forward. But what can we do now, and what's available so that I can, because there's people I know that are in this situation, and I'd like to try and get them engaged. So do we have anything for children who maybe have just finished GCSEs, haven't got those grades?
Yeah, there's probably a couple of people that I'll pull into this one. Jenny, if there's a sort of thought from your side around the sort of Talent Foundry aspect, but I was also thinking, Amit, is it the B levels that you're working on in that sense?
Yeah.
Jenny, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I think I think probably Amit is best to answer this in terms of entry routes.
Yeah, I'm happy to. So there's a couple of options. So I'm not sure if you've heard about the Rail Skills Hub, which is being the Rail Skills Hub is a level 1 foundation apprenticeship, and it's for those young people that are not quite getting their GCSE maths and English. So this has been launched at Enfield College on rail engineering, and we're just completing the first cohort of young people who've taken part in this, and the idea is that they'll work up themselves up to a level 3 apprenticeship or move them into an entry-level role, and it's been really successful. So we're now replicating this at Birmingham BMET College, and the idea is to launch this in other locations across the country. So there is, I'll share the link on the chat, but it's called the Rail Skills Hub, a really good initiative. We've also got T-level placements. So I'm not sure if everyone knows about T-levels. It's equivalent to A-levels, but it has a 45-day work placement. And again, it's much more practical than an A-level. So the idea is that you can do a T-level in quite a lot of different subject matters in college where you're studying, but also get to work in an organisation. And again, for us at Network Rail, we take on T-level students, and the sort of hope is to sort of push them onto a level 3 apprenticeship scheme. It's a really good pipeline for that, and it's those young people that don't quite like the exam sort of based lessons. So a really good option.
Yes, okay, that's great. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you, everyone. I'm conscious of time, so we're getting towards sort of 20 minutes before the end. So I've probably got a couple more questions that I'll ask the panel as a sort of collective, and then obviously we can open up to the floor for sort of questions and answers. Just pop some more stuff in the chat. I think Elena's keeping an eye on what's sort of flowing through there, so we can kind of bring some of those questions to life in a bit. So probably sort of stepping back a little bit now in some respects. So we've gone into a fair bit of detail around some of these things. Just thinking around, particularly across the three of you there, across your work, particularly in the rail sector. Where are we making the sort of the best progress in some respects, and at the same time, where do we need to kind of focus our efforts a little bit more? Jenny, to you first.
Oh, it's such a good question, because I always feel like we could just do so much more. And I know for a lot of people on this call, this won't be your day job. This will be on top of everything that you're doing in terms of your objectives and your KPIs, keeping your customers happy and satisfied, and you're doing all of this on the side of your desk. So hugely appreciative actually of everybody that comes to support a Talent Foundry programme, because I know that you're giving up valuable work time to be able to do that to support the next generation. So for me, I think there is an element of, can we just do more of this at scale and keep doing it, because there's so many more young people that we're not reaching. I mean, the point about those students that aren't reaching their basic GCSE in maths and English, you know, if we can work with those students earlier and show them that there is a positive, successful, fulfilling future for them after school, we might be able to capture some of that and help them to think about how do they how can they get support within the school so that they can achieve the basic requirement, the foundation levels that will then lead to a successful career. So I think it's about helping young people. They know they have aspiration. We know they have aspirations. We see it and we hear it. They just don't know the steps that they need to take. And so reinforcing that message that getting your basic qualifications at school is going to be helpful, bearing in mind we know that there's all those other challenges and barriers for a lot of young people to be able to achieve that. So for me, I think some of the best work is already happening. We see so many great volunteers from all types of roles and responsibilities in the railway industry going into schools, and we would like to do more of that. We feel like that is definitely scalable, and working perhaps with more of those specific groups which are finding connecting to work much harder than others, which I think some of the groups we've talked about already on this call.
And that's really interesting. There's a lot sort of to unpick in that, obviously, like the different aspects around the participant engagement and so on. But even just your first sort of point around that sort of day job plus piece, you know, we do rely on sort of volunteers to help a lot of these programs. And some of the work we've been on, the conversation we've had with industry around how different organizations' policies are around volunteering. Some have 5 days, some have 2 days, some have 1 day, some are quite strict around what you can and can't sort of do in terms of volunteering. Some organizations don't have a volunteer policy. So even sort of just unlocking that potential for people to get involved in these sorts of projects would be, I suppose, a big step forward. Sort of same sort of question, I suppose, to you, Dante, around that sort of element. What are we doing kind of really well? What can we kind of do a bit more of going forward?
I mean, I think despite what I'm about to say, I am optimistic about things, but I think we're not doing great in a lot of areas. I think we have done a lot better in the recent areas in terms of, particularly in terms of bringing women into more senior leadership roles. I think we've seen real progress there in that space. Still a lot more to do with there. I think that, I mean, you know, again, when I joined GTR 10 years ago, we were at about 20% women, and today we're at about 20% women. So I think in some ways, you know, the dial is moving very slowly. However, it's not hopeless. I think the areas that we still need to do the most amount of work in are, you know, if you look at our ethnic diversity is really strong at the front line, but I think probably stronger than most industries. But when you start to move, anytime you move sort of above the hierarchy there, we have to really translate that into better career progression and senior representation. I think there's a lot of work to be done in that space. And I think probably our workest area is in people with disabilities. I think that understanding that we are it's a safety critical kind of industry. I think in some ways we have put a lot of barriers in place that are not actually necessary or could be adaptable, much more adaptable. We're so risk averse that sometimes I think we to our own detriment. So I think we need to do a lot of work. And I hope, you know, my strong hope is that GBR collectively, that we can put our heads together and really start to make some real progress in this space. But again, making sure that if we're recruiting people with disabilities, that we know that they're coming into an environment that's going to support them.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. Like you said, having those sort of practical support mechanisms in place is a must. At the same time, just thinking around the sort of beyond barriers role, that, you know, the whole reason of this network, the responsibility we've got to kind of, I don't know what the right word is, harvest, collate all these sorts of stories, feedback, comments that we're getting, insights that we're getting from across industry. And obviously, just for the benefit of everyone else on the call, above the sort of beyond barriers network, we've got a steering group that's attended by a whole load of different industry professionals around HR people, all sorts of skills, etc. in that sort of vein. And then there's a steering group that's chaired by a number of different MDs and senior sort of people leaders from across the rail sector. And what we can collectively do is take all the information we hear at calls like this and feed that back, whether it's a bit of a manifesto or it's just a bit of a top 10 wish list, whatever it is. We can kind of make those insights heard by those individuals to either unlock change at the top or kind of steer and kind of guide sort of policy to make those changes that you've just talked about there, Dante. Thank you.
Yeah, agreed.
Amit, Last one, over to you in terms of what can we, I'm going to flip it the other way around, go negative first and then go positive second.
So I think we need to shift the dial on young people's perceptions about careers in rail, because we know this is a challenge for us. And I think I won't quote the stat, but I know that our under 25 workforce is a lot lower. It is increasing, but it's still quite low. So we need to shift the dial on engaging more with young people and changing perceptions. So I know that we compete with other industries and other brands, and we're not often seen as an exciting or visible industry to young people. So I think we need to really focus on getting more relatable role models in front of young people, doing more in terms of work experience, delivering more exciting hands-on activities, programs, just to inspire more and more young people. I think that is one of the biggest barriers. It's that perception piece. We need to move away. And I think what we're doing really well on is, as an industry, we really recognise the importance of this. I mean, yesterday I was at the launch for the Rail Youth Promise, and the number of people there that were so passionate and committed to this is just brilliant to see. And we all recognise this. I think we all are now recognising and aligning early engagement, early careers engagement to workforce planning. So we're recognising our skills gaps in the future and what we need to do now to address those skills gaps. So that's all brilliant stuff. But I think, do more to sort of change that perception piece for young people.
That's huge, isn't it? And just thinking aloud, I think we've heard on other calls and sort of other sort of conversations more widely than this, the sort of, I don't know what you call it, the responsibility of the railways in some respect. We're going to be, I think it's the second biggest employer. We're probably the second or third biggest landowner in the, all those sorts of things that actually we've got a reach, a connection, an opportunity to promote sort of career progression, both within the railways, but also obviously through the services we provide, reaching into different communities, connecting to jobs, education, leisure services, whatever it is. There's a huge sort of opportunity for rail to get this whole social mobility and kind of career progression piece correct. So yeah, that's absolutely fantastic. We've had some great sort of questions, some great conversations around these sorts of aspects. Elena, is there anything in the chat that you wanted to sort of pull out and put to the guys?
I'll do a quick run through. Let's see if we can finish, at least give people 5 minutes. But thank you so much. What a great conversation. And the chat has been on fire as well, which is brilliant. Thanks everyone for your engagement. So people are really sharing some schemes that they have, they're aware of or they've been involved with. So it's definitely worth checking the chats and just putting those together. Thank you, everyone. Kirsty, you talk about Career Ready. There is, the links further down below as well. If I go down, Amit, can you please remind us what was the name of the charity that we used to sort of outreach send students?
Yeah, I'll share it in the chat as well. So it's called Duck2.
Duck2. Okay, I thought it was
something. I'll share it now on the chat. Yeah.
But it's not a spell like a duck, isn't it?
It's Ductu.
Okay, because I was trying to Google it. Duck Netball Rail, and it come up with really weird stuff.
Confusingly, it has a little duck, I think, in the logo.
It does actually.
Oh, is that what it is? Okay. So I think Tracy, hello Tracy, she posed a question to you, Amit, but that was actually answered. People, feel free to come off mute if you prefer to ask the questions. People are sharing their stories. Thank you, Kate, for doing that as well. So we talked about young people and SEND communities, and there is a comment from Kirsty that I'm going to read out loud, but she was asking whether there are opportunities to engage with young people SEND communities through gaming companies. As a parent of SEND children, they are very much into simulator gaming, including train simulators. Is there any way to engage with this community through the gaming companies somehow? That's a really good point. Any thoughts on that?
So I'm happy to come in on this. So on the Network Rail Schools engagement page, we've actually created some digital games.
Okay.
Have a look. I'll share the link again just now. But yeah, we've got a couple of digital games on there, and we're looking to develop these even more for this community.
Brilliant. And it is all about collaboration, right? Gaming will be actually quite an attractive thing for a young person to, be involved with. Bethany, who is also part of our leadership group in Beyond Barriers, was asking questions about actually collating a lot of these links and all this information, summarize it and send it into our next newsletter. So we'll take an action to do that. Really good point from Beth. Thank you, James, for sharing as well the link on routes into rail. I'm also coming from HS2 and quite, familiar with that one. So really, really great point. Emily, really, I was reading about this, and I've never heard about this type of a scheme before, but it's not a question per se, but I mean, if you've got any comments, if it's something that you were aware of. But in Scotland, there is some partnerships. No, let me just read it. University of Highlands and Islands, they have something called a schools partnership, which is a pathway for children who struggle with attending mainstream school environments, so they can attend college from an age 14, 15. Have we seen this in England at all? So instead of actually going through all the way, there are some partnerships that we can take people or children that might be struggling with that mainstream school out and get them into.
Yeah, I mean, I can answer that. There is in the English school system, there is alternative. They're called alternative provision or pupil referral units. Will be outside the mainstream school, and sometimes they will be attached to a mainstream school. So you might have alternative provision within a mainstream school as well. So I think some of the things that all of this information does exist. It's just. And again, you're all busy trying to find exactly what you're looking for, and who you want to talk to is probably the hardest bit. So if there are schools in your area, or if there are in your areas, if you're thinking of that you would like to work with some of these groups, then you can have a chat with our school engagement team, and we'll be able to perhaps think about whether or not some of our programs could be delivered to those specific areas. And I think that's, I think Dante said it earlier, like this is one of the opportunities with GB Rail coming, sorry to use another terrible pun on board. I'm terrible at the transport puns. Please forgive me. But this is although it's going to take some time, there is an opportunity for lots of this activity to be joined together, so that people don't always feel like they have to start from scratch, or don't know where to look or who to ask about some of this information, because it does exist in variety forms across your industry and across ours in education as well.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I was just thinking there as well. It's interesting, like we talked about the different levels of collaboration and partnership and so on. And there's obviously sort of practical delivery partners we can work with to activate some of these interventions in schools and colleges and so on. But at the same time, just thinking around some of those other partners in the social mobility program that have a more kind of strategic partnership aspect, even thinking more practically around, careers and enterprise company and others like that.
Yeah.
As we develop that sort of collective response, bringing in key partners that help us connect to some of these different groups, these different partnerships, as you said there, the APCs, the PRUs, how do we connect with those in a more structured sense as the rail sector? Yeah, lots to do, lots of opportunity, isn't there?
Great, thank you guys. So the other comment from Jessica, which I think is really relevant as well to this conversation, we're talking a lot about how do we get people into the railway, but obviously once we are on the railway, we must ensure that the managers and the business is equipped, like Jessica is saying, to make sure that we are supporting people and they are in communities where they are allowed to thrive, and that's the whole point of Beyond Barriers. The key thing is actually understanding what the barriers are for those people that have come into the industry from these backgrounds. A lot of us, for example, in that are joining this network, what can we do to foster that collaboration? And we need to understand what's working and what is not. So really good, relevant point, Jessica. That's why we exist as well. Louisa was talking about volunteering, and I think if we, as Beyond Barriers, and obviously as the links that we've established today, we can be a bit of a link to promote opportunities where there are volunteering opportunities to do this outreach as part of the established partnerships. Then I think we can look into that. So thank you for that. There's some comments about some training on disability. With more about volunteering. Sorry, the last bits I haven't read. So we've had a story from Nathan. Nathan, thank you so much for sharing your stories and the importance of care leavers as well. It's a really important topic, and I don't know if anyone wants to say anything that on care leavers, if there is anything going on that we want to share.
I was going to say care leavers will be one of the groups as part of the Access to Rail framework.
Brilliant.
Quite a lot of people talked about that, and we want to do stuff with that group. Yes,
yeah. Thank you. And Nathan, we might reach out for a case study if that's okay. No pressure though, but I've taken your contacts. Amit, you've said information to talk to. Florence, can you get added to the newsletter? Absolutely. But Florence, check if you are registered with Beyond Barriers. I'll put the link on the membership. So if you register, you'll automatically get added to the newsletter, i.e. if you're a member of Beyond Barriers, which is probably what you got this email. So I'm surprised that you didn't get it. We'll double check, Florence, we'll take it away. Some resources were shared. and then we're running out of time. I'm trying to read quick. If I could read as quick as I speak, though. Well,
We'd have been finished about 20 minutes ago.
yeah, I think there's actually a comment. That would be great. Yeah, Louisa, thank you for that comment. I think there's mainly a comments, but please, if I haven't covered someone's questions,
There's some
can
really
you just
interesting sort of
shout?
practical bits that have come up in other sessions as well around sort of how do we engage with young people with different needs, even sort of questions around, when we were talking in previous sessions around access to sort of rail tickets and so on, making sure that pricing, the opportunity to travel to and from employment, education, so on is affordable. So yeah, there's some sort of real key messages from this chat that I think aligns really well with the sort of messages we've heard elsewhere that we can then present back to the steering group, the working groups, and so on.
Yeah. Brilliant. Oh, Jessica.
Yeah, I was just going to say one thing just to be mindful of, and I'm sure you already are, is when we ask about reasonable adjustments, and someone goes, oh, you've got a course you're going on, what reasonable adjustments do you need? Straight away, my heart goes into panic stations, because actually, if you don't know the full picture of what's expected, what's it look like, what's the environment, what's the output, you can't advise of what adjustment you may need. So when we're talking about removing barriers, for young people, they might not even know what that barrier is. So I'm from a background of being in social services, not really having a great education, also being neurodivergent, all of those neurospicy things, not having the best education. When people ask me, what barriers are you facing or what adjustments do you need? It sort of put me in panic mode, because I don't actually know until I fully understand what's required. So it's just something to think about, and how we communicate. We've been talking about how we're going out to schools, how we're working with charities. I've worked with Ambitious about autism recently to do an internship for 5 people that are over the age of 16 to 24, but have been out of employment due to their needs. And I think it's all about how we communicate. I think we could support millions and millions and millions of people if we just do inclusive communication, where we communicate really openly about what we require and what we need, and try and come to an outcome that fits. So that's all I wanted to raise, is just looking at when we talk about barriers, when we talk about adjustments, people don't really know what they need or how they need it. It's the environment they're in that will set what that boundary is. So it's just something to think about. That was all I wanted to raise. And Google, I've put a comment in there about Google. They are absolutely phenomenal when it comes to putting adjustments in place and breaking barriers. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say.
Neurospicy, you said. That's probably now my favorite word of the day. Thank you, Jessica. That's just brilliant. We've got a few minutes, so I'll just go to Kate and Kirsty, but please, just conscious of time. Kate, please come in.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I sound very asthmatic. As I had an asthma attack yesterday, but all is getting better. So I don't know whether you lot have recalled about High Wycombe. They've now got extended barriers from 30 years ago. They've now just put them in. So they're considerably better. They're more reinforced, and they're considerably higher, so you can't dive bomb below them. Also, speaking from a disability perspective, because that's what I've got a variety of long-term conditions and needs, but the first thing I see on the railway is the barriers at the gate line. So we've got to think about the terminology of wording, about barriers, gate line, tickets, and also understanding the ticket from a disabled person's perspective. So I literally, luckily, my station in Berkshire know exactly what I want when I want it. I ran in there the other day on crutches and said, right, I need this DP, return, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, fantastic, I know exactly what you want. So I think we got to have sort of like a dictionary of terminology that actually the TOCs know how to talk to disabled people, parent carers, and also those with autistic needs, as well as the SEND team. Also, as an advocate, I think that actually, I mean, I've done a lot of travel training, and I've worked for a lot of TOCs before. And they've all been different. And actually, I met up with one of the ex-managers of the deformed now, one of the talks that actually he said, I can remember all the expertise information that you gave me. I've never forgotten it. That was well over 20 years ago. So the first thing that we disabled people see on the railway is actually the gate line barriers, and it's like, do we have to go through them? It's like going through customs.
Thank you, Kate. Yeah, thank you for that point. Absolutely. And Kirsty, do you want to come in next? We've got 30 seconds. Sorry.
Yeah. It was just surrounding when we have career editions running, because we always have additional needs schools that we bring people in through as well. So we specifically go through adjustments, but we go through that with all the students as well in advance. So we set them out a timetable of what to expect for the period. They get locations, they get types of environments, they get a whole variety of things. So sometimes they might need formal organisation on the route that they're going to have to take. So their adjustments might look different, just depending on what's going on. And I know that the training team send out quite specific stuff on adjustments about what to expect within the training centre as well. So Larbert Training Centre is brilliant in terms of what they share with the teams coming in for training in that respect, so that there's that expectation so people know. But people also don't know what their own barriers are, which is why we try to encourage people to use Clear Talents to assess
absolutely.
that.
Thank you so much, guys. That's such a good point. And we have got 30 seconds, so really quickly about Beyond Barriers. Thank you, everyone, to all the panel, Tom, for organising. It's just been a great discussion, and everyone that has participated, which is everyone, thank you. One thing that I wanted to say, we've got a newsletter coming out soon for Beyond Barriers. It's called Changing Tracks. We've got a lot of information to put in there, a bit of a wrap up on how social mobility day went, some of the work that we've been doing at the back of that with the mentoring scheme. We're thinking about putting together a bit of a survey to talk more about, social mobility, because we know that we haven't nailed the language. So there is loads that is going to probably come your way, but please keep on engaging. This is your network, and the only way that we're going to be successful is if we keep on hearing feedback, we create this collective voice, and we are a force for change. So thank you so much. 11 on the dot, really appreciate it. We'll share the recording with everyone. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.